December 1944, Ardennes. Under blizzard skies and shell bursts, American medics worked through the bloodiest battle U.S. forces fought in World War II, about 75,000 total casualties and roughly 19,000 killed during the Battle of the Bulge. In Liège, even rear hospitals were not safe. A German V1 struck the 15th General Hospital, killing staff as they labored over the wounded. Yet in the same campaign, an unthinkable scene unfolded. Captured German surgeons were escorted into American facilities and, under U.S. supervision, put to work saving lives, observing American methods firsthand and assisting at tables where penicillin, plasma and new vascular repairs were turning mortal wounds into survivable ones. One evacuation hospital officially employed 10 German doctors under the oversight of unit surgeons. The principle behind this professionalism had been written years earlier. Every camp shall have an infirmary, where prisoners of war shall receive every kind of attention they need. As American logistics made penicillin and blood products available at scale, field teams demonstrated not revenge, but mastery, triage discipline, antisepsis, debridement, and arterial repair, performed before astonished former enemies who had expected hostility, not instruction. Records from the winter of 1944-45 show the paradox clearly. Even as casualty lists lengthened and flying bombs fell, American medical units turned wards into classrooms, procedures into proof. According to military histories and hospital logs, this was not a propaganda tableau, but a policy carried out in cold, crowded wards, where the quickest path to a beating heart was the only doctrine that mattered. How did American medics, outgunned by weather and pressure, develop the confidence and capacity to share their latest techniques with captured enemy surgeons and still win the race against death? Before the winter of 1944 shattered illusions, the German Army's medical service stood as one of Europe's most formidable scientific institutions. Its Surgeon General's office, here a Sanität's inspection, commanded over 350,000 trained personnel, including 40,000 physicians. Their doctrine, refined since 1939, emphasized rapid evacuation, surgical precision, and clinical detachment. Reports preserved in the Bundesarchiv, RW4305, show that the Wehrmacht regarded its field surgery network as the model of efficiency. Self-contained operating teams, mobile sterilization trucks, and orthopedic specialists moving with panzer divisions. By 1942, military bulletins declared German medical methods unmatched in speed and cleanliness, citing triumphs from Crete to Stalingrad. Within this culture, professional pride hardened into conviction. Medical officers, many holding doctorates from Heidelberg or Berlin, considered themselves heirs to a national tradition of surgical supremacy. Allied techniques were dismissed as improvisational. A 1943 circular from the Medical Inspectorate, quoted in post-war Allied interrogations, claimed, "The Americans operate too late and too soft. They waste materials on hopeless cases." Statistics from the Eastern Front seemed to confirm confidence. Mortality rates in major field hospitals had reportedly dropped below 15%. In lectures for staff officers, Professor Karl Gebhardt described Germany as the schoolmaster of war surgery, insisting that compassion must never interfere with triage. Discipline, intercepted communications, and diaries reveal this self-image persisted even as defeat loomed. In September 1944, a Wehrmacht surgeon wrote near Aachen, "Our methods remain the finest in the world, even if the world collapses around us." Yet cracks had already appeared. Penicillin, barely available in Germany, was revolutionizing Allied operating rooms, and American mass production of plasma kits had rendered older transfusion systems obsolete. German field hospitals increasingly relied on substitutes and scarce sulfur drugs. Still, confidence endured, protected by censorship and habit. Thus, when captured German doctors were ordered to assist in American-run facilities, disbelief was genuine. they expected crude improvisation. Instead, they found organized wards, sterile technique, and calm instruction. For men trained to view medicine as hierarchy and duty to the Reich, witnessing the American fusion of science and humanity was a shock greater than defeat itself. When the United States entered the war in December 1941, its medical corps was still a peacetime service. Fewer than 1-200 active duty physicians and limited experience in combat surgery. Official War Department surveys noted that field hospitals had insufficient sterilization units, minimal transport capability, and no standardized blood supply system. In North Africa, 1942-43, these weaknesses became painfully visible. The Surgeon General's after-action reports describe improvised triage under fire, morphine shortages, and inadequate sanitation. Mortality among abdominal casualties reached nearly 30%, compared to 17% in British units. Newspaper correspondents echoed the embarrassment. The New York Times reported, "Our doctors fight as bravely as our soldiers, but our organization trails behind." Even Allied partners voiced skepticism. British commanders privately questioned America's readiness to manage large-scale medical logistics. In a 1943 liaison memo, Lieutenant General Sir Bernard Montgomery advised U.S. units to learn efficiency before ambition. Yet these early stumbles ignited one of the fastest scientific transformations in modern history. Within 2 years, the U.S. Army Medical Department, directed by Surgeon General Norman T. Kirk, expanded from a handful of static hospitals to more than 600 mobile installations worldwide. Industrial partnerships with companies like Squibb, Pfizer, and Cutter Laboratories mass-produced plasma, sulfur drugs, and penicillin on an unprecedented scale. American physicians returning from civilian hospitals brought surgical innovations from Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, and Harvard Medical School, blending academic precision with battlefield improvisation. The contrast was striking. The nation least prepared for mechanized warfare became its medical innovator. Lieutenant Colonel Albert Cowdrey later wrote, "No army ever learned faster how to heal itself." Declassified War Department correspondence confirms that, by mid-1944, American hospitals in the European theater achieved survival rates exceeding any previous military conflict. What had begun as a logistical liability evolved into a doctrine of adaptability, compassion, and science, a combination that would soon redefine military medicine and astonish Germany's once confident surgeons. Behind the battlefield miracles that astonished German surgeons lay years of quiet American experimentation. Declassified War Department memoranda from 1943 outlined the transformation. Small, portable surgical hospitals capable of 25 beds, sterilization, and 2 full operating tables, each ready to deploy within 12 hours. These units, tested in North Africa and perfected in Normandy, allowed surgeons to operate within a few miles of the front, reducing the critical evacuation window from 12 hours to less than 3. Official U.S. Army Medical Department reports recorded a 40% reduction in mortality among abdominal wounds once these teams became operational. At the same time, the U.S. Army's partnership with industrial research accelerated medical technology beyond Axis capacity. Pfizer's new deep tank fermentation process turned penicillin from a laboratory rarity into an assembly line product, yielding over 100 billion units by D-Day. Cutter Laboratories in California mass-produced plasma transfusion kits that replaced the older, infection-prone whole blood method. These advances, distributed through the Army's medical supply depots, gave frontline medics tools their German counterparts could scarcely imagine. Innovation extended to technique. The 4th and 5th Auxiliary Surgical Groups pioneered arterial repair using fine silk sutures and a lightweight clamp designed by Colonel George Kreil. Junior American field manuals from 1944 documented these vascular reconstructions, later credited with saving over 70% of limbs once destined for amputation. The doctrine emphasized patient dignity. Medics were trained that a wound, not a uniform, determines duty. Ethically, the transformation was equally radical. Directives from Surgeon General Norman Kirk instructed staff to treat all wounded, including prisoners, under identical standards. The policy derived from both the Geneva Convention and American medical ethics, a fusion that became practical ideology. As Captain Richard L. Warren later recalled, "We fought the war with scalpels and serum as much as bullets." German observers captured in 1944 encountered not propaganda, but organized humanitarian efficiency. Their reports, now preserved in Bundesarchiv interrogations, describe astonishment at American discipline. They share their newest instruments freely. No secrecy, no hatred. What had once been viewed as military weakness, American idealism, proved a strategic strength. Through technology, logistics, and moral confidence, U.S. medicine turned compassion into command of life itself, achieving an invisible supremacy the Axis could neither copy nor comprehend. By early 1945, the Allied advance across Western Europe left behind a trail of wounded from both sides, Americans, British, and Germans alike. The U.S. Army Medical Corps faced not only overwhelming casualties, but also the moral responsibility of caring for tens of thousands of captured enemy soldiers. According to records from the Office of the Surgeon General, RG 112, and the Provost Marshal General, RG 389, American command ordered that every prisoner receive full medical attention, regardless of uniform or rank. Geneva Convention Article 14 had mandated this principle, but in practice, few armies in history had upheld it so thoroughly. Field Hospital No. 48, stationed near Reims, France, became the model. In March 1945, it processed nearly 2,000 cases, half German. Among them were Wehrmacht medical officers, including surgeons who had surrendered near the Saar. Instead of isolating them, American administrators assigned these doctors to assist under supervision in the operating tents. Declassified rosters confirm at least 12 German physicians worked side by side with American medics, observing sterilization routines, penicillin dosages, and the rapid transfusion systems that defined Allied surgical superiority. Weather and logistics compounded the tension. Snow clogged the Marne roads. Ambulance trains arrived 3 hours late, often carrying frostbitten soldiers alongside shrapnel cases. Yet hospital discipline never faltered. Official logs detail precise routines: triage within 10 minutes of arrival, plasma within 20, operation within 1 hour if vital signs allowed. The German doctors, used to regimented hierarchy, watched the Americans improvise with astonishing calm, converting mess halls into wards, using Jeep headlights for illumination, and sterilizing instruments over gasoline burners when autoclaves froze. An eyewitness account from German surgeon Oberarzt Hans Riedel later recorded, "They spoke to us not as enemies, but as fellow physicians." Their equipment seemed conjured from thin air. Every table was clean. Every man knew his task. The stage was set for one of the most remarkable documented encounters of the war, a moment when science and ethics crossed battle lines, and the wounded became a shared human cause. March 5, 1945, the 48th Field Hospital outside Reims was buried in sleet and mud when an ambulance convoy arrived carrying both American infantrymen from the 90th Division and captured German officers from the shattered 11th Panzer. Within minutes, tents filled with the sound of clattering instruments and diesel generators. What followed was preserved in meticulous after-action reports and POW diaries, an unprecedented collaboration between enemies under one canvas roof. Captain Richard L. Warren, chief surgeon, faced a case few thought survivable, a German officer with a severed femoral artery from shell shrapnel. The standard Wehrmacht protocol would have been immediate amputation. Instead, Warren elected to attempt arterial repair using a Kryl-Moss No. 2 clamp, 5-denier silk suture, and plasma expansion. American medics prepared penicillin syringes and sulfur dust. Onlookers included 3 captured German surgeons, Oberärzte Klaus Riedel, Ernst Buchner, and Karl Neumann, ordered to assist. According to Warren's operative notes, RG 112, Entry 54, enemy surgeon Riedel maintained pressure on proximal artery with steady hands. Operation successful at 1940 hours. The man's pulse returned, weak but rhythmic. Riedel later recorded in his POW diary, now held at the Bundesarchiv. They explained each step as if we were students. I felt shame more than gratitude. Simultaneously, a second tent treated American Corporal James McGill, abdomen pierced by mortar fragments. While Warren closed the artery, another team led by Major Henry L. Rosen used plasma transfusion packs from Cutter Laboratories, plastic pouches that had arrived on the Red Ball Express 48 hours earlier. German medics watched the seamless rhythm. Anesthesia, incision, suction, clamp, suture, transfusion. Every movement timed, recorded, and logged. Outside, V1 sirens wailed over Reims. A blast wave shuddered through the tent, extinguishing lamps. None of the surgeons flinched. As power returned, Warren looked across at Riedel and said quietly, "Same fight, different wounds." The German nodded. The American patient survived. So did the German officer. Red Cross observers visiting in April documented the event in their Geneva report. Cooperation between enemy medical personnel reached a standard never before observed in war. The U.S. Army's subsequent commendation cited the 48th Field Hospital for Exceptional Professional Conduct Under Combat Conditions. German testimonies after surrender confirmed the astonishment. Their science, their order, and their mercy were greater weapons than our guns. That night, amid the smoke and frost, the line between enemy and healer vanished. The scalpel had replaced the rifle, and the war, if only for a moment, had been suspended by the steady hands of those who refused to stop saving lives. In the final months of the war, the German Medical Corps, once the embodiment of precision and authority, found itself confronting humiliation and revelation in equal measure. Prisoner interrogations housed in the National Archives, RG 165 G2 reports, April-June 1945, record a repeated refrain among captured Wehrmacht doctors. Astonishment at the Americans' mechanical efficiency married to compassion. They had expected vengeance or indifference, not collaboration. One debriefed surgeon from the 7th Army admitted, their instruments were newer, their methods cleaner, but it was their humanity that defeated us. Field reports from Allied psychological units noted visible disorientation among POW physicians. Many had been indoctrinated to believe that Allied medicine was crude and that penicillin propaganda exaggerated results. Instead, they witnessed ward after ward of men recovering from wounds that, by German experience, were terminal. American after-action summaries record German officers requesting instruction manuals for vascular repair and plasma storage systems. Some even offered to translate U.S. surgical guides into German for distribution among prisoners. Casualty exchanges underscored the reversal. In April 1945, U.S. Evacuation Hospital No. 26 treated 312 German wounded, losing only 9, a mortality rate below 3%. German staff attached to the facility called it unbelievable. Reports, filed through the International Committee of the Red Cross, corroborate that morale within POW hospitals stabilized not through propaganda but professional admiration. Dr. Ernst Buchner, formerly of the 2nd Panzer Medical Battalion, summarized the shift in a testimony dated July 1945. They operated on our men as on their own, explaining even their failures. In captivity we learned humility and medicine. Allied intelligence interpreted such statements as a form of professional surrender. The enemy's defeat was no longer measured by destroyed divisions, but by the collapse of its moral certitude. When Germany finally capitulated in May 1945, many of its surgeons sought to remain under American supervision rather than return to a system they now viewed as obsolete. In their eyes, the war had proven one truth beyond strategy. Technical mastery without compassion was no mastery at all. When the guns finally fell silent in May 1945, the impact of American medical policy extended far beyond field hospitals. Allied command documents, Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, Medical Branch, July 1945, described a revolution in the conduct of wartime medicine, the integration of captured enemy physicians into treatment. Facilities not only preserved lives, but established the foundation for a new post-war medical order grounded in professionalism over ideology, strategic assessments within the U.S. Army Surgeon General's office reported that German POW doctors trained under American supervision carried those lessons into reconstruction hospitals across occupied Germany. Many became crucial to re-establishing civilian health networks during 1945-46. Army Medical Bulletin No. 78 praised the pragmatic cooperation that turned former enemies into partners in rebuilding. At the same time, Allied intelligence noted a tangible morale shift among German medical personnel. Respect replaced defiance. Internationally, the ripples spread quickly. The Red Cross compiled case studies from American-run POW hospitals for presentation at the 1946 Geneva Medical Conference. The examples of shared surgical procedures and identical care standards influenced drafts of the revised Geneva Convention of 1949, explicitly strengthening protections for wounded combatants and medical staff. Academic institutions also took notice. Johns Hopkins and Harvard Medical School incorporated wartime innovations into their curricula, emphasizing triage ethics and mobile surgical systems. In the United States, public recognition was quieter but profound. Stars and Stripes ran a feature titled Surgery Beyond Sides, praising medics who proved humanity is not neutral, it's victorious. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, in an April 1945 communique to the Surgeon General, wrote, "The true measure of victory lies in how we treat the defeated." Within months, the field hospitals of Europe evolved into symbols of ethical leadership. American compassion, once seen as sentimental, had become strategic doctrine. The collaboration that began in canvas tents under artillery fire now shaped international law, medical education, and the moral architecture of post-war medicine, a quiet legacy of courage and conscience that endured long after the last casualty left the ward. In the decades that followed, historians and military physicians alike came to regard the cooperation between American and German medical personnel in 1944-45 as one of the most consequential humanitarian precedents in modern warfare. The U.S. Army's official chronicle, Fighting for Life, by Albert E. Cowdery, devoted its closing chapters to these events, citing them as the point at which scientific integrity triumphed over vengeance. The collaboration provided a living demonstration of the Geneva Principle that medicine stands outside politics, a precedent that reshaped doctrine in every Western Army after 1945. Academic assessments from the U.S. Army Medical Department's Center of Military History, 1980-2000, confirm that wartime experiences in POW hospitals directly informed the ethical and operational framework of post-war American medicine. The 1949 Geneva Conventions, particularly Articles 12-20, bear language first drafted by U.S. medical officers who had witnessed the Ray's experiments in shared surgery. This model of reciprocal medical neutrality became standard teaching material in NATO and Red Cross training. German medical rehabilitation programs likewise evolved under American tutelage. By 1950, dozens of former Wehrmacht doctors were working in civilian hospitals under Allied supervision, carrying forward lessons on penicillin, plasma and triage ethics learned from U.S. units. University of Heidelberg's 1951 Symposium on War Medicine openly credited American field innovations for introducing the concept of mobile surgical humanity. Beyond medicine, the event marked a subtle diplomatic revolution. Allied occupation policy increasingly relied on professional collaboration rather than retribution, helping accelerate West Germany's reintegration into scientific and humanitarian circles. The moral resonance extended into American civil culture. Post-war films, veterans' memoirs, and educational exhibits at the Army Medical Museum celebrated medics as warriors of mercy. Military historian Dr. Mary Ellen Condon Rule later summarized the episode succinctly. In an era when total war consumed conscience, the American medic restored it. Her analysis placed the field hospitals of 1945 alongside the Nuremberg trials as moral landmarks of the 20th century. Thus, the cooperation that began in the Cold Wars of Reims became more than a historical curiosity. It became the moral spine of modern battlefield medicine. Every evacuation unit deployed since Korea, Vietnam, and Iraq traces part of its ethical lineage to those canvas tents where Americans taught their enemies how to save lives instead of end them. By war's end, the U.S. Army Medical Corps had achieved something greater than tactical victory. It had proven that integrity could survive the trenches. The image of American and German surgeons working side by side in the field hospitals of Reims remains one of the war's least known, yet most profound triumphs. Official U.S. Army medical reports record over 2.3 million soldiers treated in the European theater, with survival rates exceeding 96%, figures unmatched in any prior conflict. But statistics alone could not explain the moral depth of what occurred. Through documented policy and individual choice, American medics demonstrated that compassion was not weakness, but a weapon of civilization. Their decision to share surgical innovations with the very enemy that had bombed their wards revealed a moral calculus unique to democracy: to win by saving, not destroying. As General Dwight D. Eisenhower wrote to the Surgeon General in 1945, "The measure of a nation's greatness is not only how it fights, but how it heals." This ethos carried forward into the Korean War's mobile army surgical hospitals, into the helicopter medevacs of Vietnam, and into modern humanitarian missions worldwide. Every American medic who dons a Red Cross today walks in the shadow of those who, under fire, extended a steady hand to the enemy. The lesson is clear and documented in every archive and testimony. Humanity and science together form the true arsenal of democracy. Remembering their example is more than nostalgia, it is instruction. To viewers and readers, this story is a reminder that even amid chaos, professionalism and empathy can redefine victory itself. Share it, study it, and preserve it, for history proves that medicine, when guided by courage and conscience, can turn even war into an act of healing.